Newly stocked on the shelves is box number 512 with your hosts Aeon and
the Lioness, Black,
Black
Trans
Trans
Women,
Women
and
Excellence
Excellence.
and defying all life expectations
The show begins
now. Hey y'all, this is Aeon.
And this is the Lioness.
And you're listening to the first episode of Box
number
512.
That was cute.
Right. So a little bit about myself, and the Lioness can talk about herself. My name is Aeon. Some of y'all might know me. About many moons ago, I had a YouTube show. I went by Aeon Far. It was a fun experience. Currently, I'm originally from Baltimore. Currently, I live in Chicago. I am 32 years old, a proud Black trans woman, and I'm just here. I wanted to start this podcast as something to do with my sister and to really share some of our life experiences from the perspective of thriving Black trans women in their 30s who are looking to great futures, and we just want to create a new narrative or create a narrative shift.
Now, for over 15 years, I'm a veteran in the game. I'm here to spread love and light and laughter to the world. That informs my ministry and that informs the work that I do, which is I'm the executive director of TILT, which is a nonprofit here in Atlanta, which stands for Trans Individuals Living Their Truth. You can find us on social media and all platforms. You can also find me, the Lioness, on Facebook and other platforms as well. Hit me up. But yes, thank you guys for tuning in to Box 512 so you can hear me and my sister do what we do.
So before we get into the main topic, let's just get into a little bit of the reasons why we wanted to do the show. This is kind of something that's been in the making. Me and the Lioness and I have talked about this essentially since we've known each other or since we've become closer with one another, and it kind of sprouted out of personal one-on-one conversations that we have with amongst each other as sisters, and we feel that it's important to share those conversations with the world to really put a different perspective of who we are as Black trans women, again, thriving and just trying to make an impact, and just trying to prepare for life and doing the work to prepare for life and to live a meaningful and fulfilling life. So it's just a lot of the narrative is Black trans women, our life expectancy is 35 years old. And if we do have some sort of visibility, we're typically relegated to like the comedic relief or over the top, or we have to be very beautiful and hyper feminine. And for me, I just feel like there's so much more to us than that. And there's so much more that we have to give to the world. So.
Yes, and I 1,000% agree with that. I don't really have much to add other than I think that this work that we're doing right now is going to be transformative, not just for outside community, but also I think that is an opportunity for us to present through our network and our community and the things that we talk about, possibility models for young Black trans women to grow in their leadership, grow in their awareness of themselves, maybe get just some tools that you can put in your toolkit of self-awareness and self-improvement. I think that we live in a world today where there's not a lot of light. And a lot of podcasts are doing a lot of different things, but what I'm excited that we have committed to is being a light in the darkness. And I think that our sisterhood is beautiful, and I think that it's also important to showcase that part of us as well.
And just a little bit of the why we decided to title this podcast Box Number
Give it to
512.
him, girl. Give it to him, girl.
So essentially, it's just a nod to our living legend, our icon, Tracy Africa Norman, who was, who still is, or who was the first Black trans model from the 70s and the 80s. And
Yes,
she was the
mother.
Yes, and she was the first Black trans woman to be featured on the cover of a hair color box, the Clairol Born Beautiful box to be exact. And the color of that box was
What was it, girl?
dark auburn number 512. So
512.
we are very intentional here about centering the lives and the legacy and the narratives of Black trans women. So why not honor Black trans women who have been great, who have laid the groundwork, who have created a tapestry that the Lioness and I stand on. Why not honor them? So that's why we decided to name this podcast Box Number 512, just to as a nod to Tracy Africa's legacy and the legacy of all the Black trans women that have come before us, and just to really set the intention of this podcast to really uplift Black trans women and let them know that this is a space where we have fun, we laugh, but it's also a space of deep reflection, healing, just trying to take yourself to the next level. I'm just so excited that we are in a time now, we're in a space now where somebody and I can come together, and then we really can give this to our community and other people who are inspired by what we do.
Point of clarity. My government name is Samaya, and Brianna is her government name. And sometimes because we know each other personally, we will slip to use that. But
Right.
but our online persona is the Lioness, and I am the Lioness, and that's Aeon, and we're going to work on that. But this is
Right.
episode 1, and I love that you guys are going to get to see us evolve fully into our characters on this podcast or our personas, and more importantly, just giving you different multifaceted sides of ourselves. Now, to what you were speaking to, Brianna, before we go any further, I want to just take a moment to get the mushiness out of the way.
Okay.
I love you.
I love you
And,
too.
and I think it's important that I start this showing and demonstrating now how much I love you, because we live in a world where sisterhood is not something that people are uplifting more, or not that it's not being uplifted, it's not being uplifted by the powers that be. There's a misconception around sisterhood, and I just want to say I love you so much, and I respect you. And even as you were talking a moment ago, it just reaffirmed and it confirmed for me that you are an amazing friend to have, and that this journey on this path together, our combined ministries, will do a mighty great work. And I want to just take that moment to just prophesy on this podcast and on us, but more importantly on you, that I see you and I honor your greatness. And I just want to thank you for everything that you are and that you will be. Amen.
Thank you, sister. I love you dearly. You already know how much you mean to me and how grateful I am for our relationship, and just how we have evolved and how we lean on each other, and how you're always a support to me, and you're always there to listen. You're always there to give me, advice, and not just the good advice, but sometimes the hard advice, or something to leave me to think on and to ponder on and to just stretch and grow as in my womanhood. So I'm just blessed that I can really call you a sister. So now that we got all of that out of the way, let's before we get into our icebreaker. So everybody is dealing with the coronavirus and being quarantined, and it's weighing on everybody's spirits, and it's a lot of confusion and chaos in the world. So I kind of just want to flip it. I don't want to add to the hysteria, and I just want to, I guess this could kind of be our icebreaker. Just talk about what you're thankful for and what you're grateful for, even during the chaos of what's going on right now.
Okay. So I want to say that I am grateful for my husband. I'm grateful for my life. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for this moment. Um, and I am excited about my future, even in spite of this. Um, you said just do what we're grateful for.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yes, those are the things that I'm grateful for. That's funny. Yeah. So yeah. What about you, Brianna? I mean, Aeon.
So I'm grateful to just have a home to be in during this chaos. I am grateful that I have enough savings to last me for however long this might be because I'm not working right now. I just finished sitting for the bar and I finished school. So, while those things are great, I still have a gap because I don't have a job. So I'm just really thankful that I have money to do the basic things. I'm thankful for my health. I'm thankful for the health of my mom, who is a healthcare worker in the healthcare field and has
Mm-hmm.
to be exposed to all of that. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for her. I'm just grateful for the health of my friends and my families and my loved ones, and I'm just grateful to have a place to lay my head because I know it's a lot of people who don't, and
And
this
there's a
is
lot of
a
people that's in jeopardy now too.
right, and I really think that the because of the leadership that we have, there's going to be a lot of fallout for this when this eventually ends, and everybody is going to feel it, and it's going to be hard on everybody. So I'm just in this moment now. I'm just taking the the time to just be thankful for the little thing, just for my peace and my sanity. I'm thankful that I was able to end my last little relationship before we went into
Mm.
this because it's just another layer of stress that's not on me. So I'm
You better
just
dish a little tea in the beginning. There's more to come, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned.
right. So I'm thankful to have my peace of mind and to have my sanity in the midst of chaos. Also, I'm happy to be starting this podcast because this podcast kind of started out of boredom and us not really us having the space and the time to really sit down and do this.
That's the beauty is like when you're in a place where you're busy and life is going and you have these ideas and you say, oh, sis, we should do this. Oh, sis, we should do this. We should come together and have a topical show similar to something like The View, but maybe just smaller and more compact. But, we talked about this, but it's amazing now that we're in a place where it's come full circle. Like, because the universe and this horrible, horrible situation right now has pushed us all to a stop. It's like, okay, so now what? Like, literally life is at a halt, and I feel like that's worth notating on our first podcast, that we're like in the middle of one of the worst national emergencies in known history, that this pandemic is affecting us, that people are dying. And I just want to put love and light for everyone out there and those affected and those impacted. And, you know, I just, it's not much more I can say other than I think that if nothing else, if those that hear this, just know that there is a tomorrow.
Right. So that was a great icebreaker. So I guess we can go into our first topic of the day.
Yeah, I
So
live, girl, I live.
so basically our the topic that came to my mind in social media and social media entertainment, there's been kind of controversy over the use of the word fish and primarily how cis black women are offended by being called the term fish.
Mm-hmm.
I started to take notice of this. T.S. Madison of the Queen's Supreme Court started to catch backlash because she used the term fish, but delving deeper into it, certain cis black women had women with her using that term, but it was kind of like a fallacy. It's like I really have a problem with you because you're trans, but because you're using the term fish, and that's something easier for people. It's something that people could be offended about. So I want to make it about that term, you using that term, but really, from my perspective, I feel like people don't like T.S. Madison because she's a trans woman. So instead of
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
attacking her for being a trans woman, which nobody wants to do because nobody wants to be painted with the transphobic or homophobic brush. It's like, oh, let me say that you using this term offends me in order to create some type of rally this movement to have a backlash against you. So that kind of started this conversation. And before we go into the conversation, for me, the term, so in community, in Black queer community, terms like fish and cunt, we have been, Black queer and trans communities have been using those terms since I came into the scene in like 2003. Like, it's words that we use to describe individuals, particularly in trans women circles. It's a term that we use to describe a trans woman who is very passable or who is very feminine in their appearance, or it could be just like a state of mind or how you behave. It's like, oh, like she's fish the way that she carries herself. And based on my recollection, I have never used fish to directly talk to a cis woman. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've never said, talking to a Black cis woman, like, hey fish or hey cunt, but it's kind of a term that has been reserved amongst community.
Well, can I interject for a moment?
Yes.
Taking it back before we even get into fish, I wanted to say you use cis as a term, and that even in itself in our community now is having a thing. And I want to take the time to just formally explain that because
Okay.
I have a lot of cisgendered friends, cis female, cis women that take offense sometimes to the use of that terminology erroneously, and it's because it hasn't truly been explained. So there's a medical designation for people. Unfortunately, sometimes that medical designation doesn't always match. So, for example, you may have someone assigned at birth male, and their gender, the way they experience the world, the lens that they see the world through, makes them feel as if that their life, their body, their soul needs to be aligned with a gender that may not align with their birth sex. So you may have that male that may decide to be a woman, and woman can look like whatever it decides to look like for that particular individual. I think we need to first explain that there's a difference between your sex and how you live in this world. Now, on the other side of that, there are individuals who are cis, and that's the word. Cis means you are in alignment with your gender expression with the heteronormative standard of what your sex was identified at birth. So, for example, if you're a woman and you identify as a cis woman, or if you're a woman and you identify with the sex you were assigned at birth, your terminology would be cis. That's not a negative term. It's not a judgment. It's not it's an identifier. So, for example, we know that all women are women. We know that we know that there are cis women, which means what y'all will consider natural women. We don't use that term because I still exist in the natural world. So cis is the medical terminology, and so we just use medical. Trans is medical, and cis is medical. Cis
Yes.
women are natural women, and trans women are women that had to go through a journey to become or express their womanhood, regardless of what that journey is. Now, I'm sorry, sis. Go ahead. You were
So,
gonna
and basically, cis is a scientific prefix for the same side of.
the same
So it's
side.
basically your gender identity that you claim for yourself corresponds with your genitalia or your sex assigned at birth. So it's not when now I can see how cis people feel like that word is used negatively against them, but commonly it probably seems negative because a lot of times y'all do a lot of negative stuff to trans folks when you are like being transphobic and discriminating against them. So it just happens that what we use those terms to describe the kind of people that are discriminated against us, but inherently the term is not negative. And like Samaya said, as we evolve as a society and as a people, the language has to evolve. And
Yeah.
simply not wanting to use the term cis and wanting to call yourself, well, I'm not you, because that's a lot of the response that I see. Well, I'm not cis. I'm a real woman. I'm a natural woman. That language is inherently transphobic because it's saying that your womanhood, because you have a vagina, your womanhood is valid. And because I'm trans, I'm an imposter. I'm a fake. I'm not the real thing.
And
And
before y'all go into the I bleed every month and I carry the child, there's a lot of women that don't have children and they're listening as well. And every time you say that, you deny them their womanhood as well. There are a lot of women that are unable to have periods. There are women that are not able to have children. And that has no bearing on the definition of what a woman is. So let's stop doing that, because you don't know what's in somebody's clothing. You don't know what organs are working in somebody's body or what they have. So let's just back up off of that conversation altogether before. And I'm just addressing what I know is the opposition that will say, well, if you can't do what I do, baby, it's a lot of people in the world that can't do what you do. Consider it a miracle. That's why childbirth is a miracle. Consider it a miracle.
yeah, but what were you about to say before I interjected?
Yes, I was about to then lead back into, so now that we've discussed cis, when we use the terminology on this show, which we will when we're talking, because we're going to be as scientific as possible. I'm not going to use a slang term or a slur that will confuse the meaning of what I'm saying. I'm going to use a term that can be used and Googled and that is medically approved and that is in the dictionary. And when you look under the dictionary for under the word cis, it will say someone that is born that is in alignment with their birth on the same side as their birth sex. But that we won't use the word like real or natural because that doesn't define anything clearly. We're going to be specific: trans, cis. So just that disclaimer. But back to what I was going to say about, so now, but transferring that conversation back to the conversation about fish. One, I want to talk about the way in which, because if the way we don't look at words, and we don't look at words as analogous to other words. And what I'm saying, and when I say that is, when we say the word nigga, and the Nigga, the way we use it in our vernacular, in our community, it has a definition that we give it. It has a power that we give it. Why? Because it's our motherfucking right to do so, because we're reclaiming something that was used to denigrating us, and we're using it the way we motherfucking please. And we've fought in our life to have the ability to say that and use it the way we want to, because why? We understand that language, the vernacular that you use, is culturally specific. That's why some people can use it and some people can't. We've established that. So now, Black people, Black women in particular, I
Like
want you to,
cis women.
Black women, Black cis women in particular, I want you to look at this a different way. Imagine now you take that same logic and you are now listening because of the internet. You've been given access to a community that was pushed to the margins, that lived in the fringe, that as a strategy of survival had to develop a coded language to define themselves in a world where it used to be illegal to be who you are. Let me say that again. It used to be illegal to be who we were. So we had to find coded language to use to explain our experience. Even like how slaves had to come up with a language so that they could speak around massa without him understanding what they were saying. Gay, LGBT folks, particularly trans folk, have had to come up with a very coded way of speaking. Now, what happens when you have globalization and the internet and everyone has each other's points of view? You have everyone hearing the words and deciding to use it. They're hearing the meaning. They're hearing people that aren't a part of the community use it and misuse it. They're hearing people who are in the community that may have heard it wrong, misuse it. And what ends up happening is you have this narrative out there that is not correct. There are many different connotations to the word fish. We know the definition, but there are many connotations. In our community, because of coded language and because of the strategies of survival that required us to develop it, We have used the word fish as a way to code it in a coded way to one say, girl, I'm one of you already. Because if you're using the word to me as another trans woman, I'm immediately going to pick my ears up and I'm going to look at you. So one is an
Right,
identifier.
right.
Two, it allows us to be able to communicate a secondary meaning to the word, which is you're beautiful, without drawing unwelcome attention to our sister who may be in a situation where she doesn't want to be outed, or it could be dangerous for her for a lot of attention to be called on her. So we speak in these coded ways. And what happens is y'all listen in on LGBT folk and you take what you want and you put up a video crying about it because you are not educated in the entire dynamic, the whole ecosystem that that word came out of. Because why? It is coded. It's not for you to get. That is the beauty of being allowed access to someone else's culture. Just like white people, you don't get to use the word and you don't get to tell other people how to use the word. If you don't want to use the word fish in that way, you don't need to. But you don't get to tell us who have an entire different cultural meaning to that word beyond the smell of the scent of fish, because no one is even using it in that way.
Exactly.
So y'all are revealing an insecurity that we're not pushing on the word. You take your meaning and if you think it's negative, you run with it. But you don't get to tell us how we use the word.
And I I want to acknowledge that for cis women, that I want to acknowledge that that term is offensive, and I can acknowledge that. I can see how it can be offensive. However, with a lot of these responses, because a lot of the people that I've seen respond to it really lack the depth to really engage in the type of analysis to understand why we as a trans women community have developed that word and used that word. A lot of times, because they lack the depth, they refuse to acknowledge how even in this situation they have access and privilege as cis people. So you're refuse, and it's kind of weird because when you have marginalized people against other marginalized people, the marginalized person with the more privilege is more less likely to relinquish their privilege when they're in the same breath trying to use their privilege to oppress another marginalized group beneath them. So,
right.
And like you said again, because trans women are becoming more visible, like the cis folks, y'all are gaining access to conversations that we have had for decades, language that we have been using for decades. So
that is hundreds of years old in some cases. Some of these
right,
terms
so
are old in the country.
right, so to me, it just kind of feels like a colonizer, like coming in on the community saying, well, this is right and this is wrong and this is how this makes me feel, and don't even acknowledge the history of why we use it or why we're not. And it's kind of like they want to cherry pick the terms that they like and the terms that they can make money off of. But then
how many
everything
websites how many websites and podcasts are based in the word, using the words like tea and
shade.
shade? These are common terms that go back since before the 20s in our community. And now all of a sudden, because now it's okay now to have gay people on TV, even if they're the stylist or the makeup artist, all of y'all have those, all of these celebrities and those folks that use the word, they take the words, they absorb it from the people that are around them, which is a beautiful thing. No one is saying it is that we have ownership. But just like everything, just like a white person trying to venture into our culture, remember that you're a guest. You can use the terminology, you can use the words, but don't get to the place where you feel like all of a sudden you have the ability to tell this marginalized group who developed this word as a strategy of survival how to navigate. Because see, now that is a problem. Because now it's like you don't realize from your own history as just overall Black people, Black women, you don't realize from our own historical narrative, because I'm a Black woman as well. So we need to remember that as the world evolves, you're going to learn more and more about the diversity that is within what a Black woman is. And you have to be okay with the reality that there's some things you may not be able to access. Just like I am okay as a trans woman, that there are a lot of things that I can't access. I in no way, and I think that's another thing we need to address as a myth, that there's something that we think that we are trying to get or take, or I want to be left alone to be myself unencumbered. And I want to honor and love my sisters regardless of what they are and what they have between their legs. Because at the end of the day, I don't know that. And that's not what matters to me. And that's the conversation that I want to have with y'all. More than it's okay for us to have this conversation about terms because we want to make sure we're communicating effectively. But deeper than that, I want you to not be so quick to separate us out and to just demonize us as see these men, because that is, and I think Brianna was speaking to that a moment ago, that is the deeper issue. The transphobia inherent in you all of a sudden, because you don't understand the word, denouncing us as women, denouncing our point of view, and really making it seem like there's nothing that we could ever do when you don't even know my walk. You don't know what I've been through in my life to be this woman that I am today. The things that almost killed me, that did not, that are a part of my walk. And we'll talk about more about that on this podcast, but never forget, you never know what someone else's life is. So you can't tell me what I am and what I'm not. And I won't do that to you either.
And a lot of the argument is, well, we don't call me fish because you wouldn't like it if I misgender you or I dad name you. And it's like, well, one, we were never calling y'all fish directly. One. And two, a
Okay,
lot of
say that
y'all are
again.
dead naming and misgendering us anyway, and
Say
we
that
have
again.
to deal with it.
Say that first thing again. We're never doing what?
We weren't talking to y'all anyway.
We never use that term referring to a woman directly in her face. That's not even how it's used. That's not even, when we use it more of a modifier to describe the noun.
Right.
But we don't usually walk up to somebody that we don't know and use that term, because why? As we said earlier, it's coded. It's a motherfucking undercover thing. It's the
And,
way we talk in our secret place.
and also, why, if the term is so inherently offensive, why would we use it to describe one another?
Thank you. And that's what they're also missing. That's why, people aren't really using context clues to
Right.
identify what the definition of the word actually is. Because, bitch, you are over to me, Brianna. Aeon, you are over to me. And you are fish, boots, albacore, born in
Right.
water. You are
It's no
everything.
shame. I love using that word to describe other trans women, like almost like she's a fish patty, or she's cunt, or she's like that.
All of that.
That's our lingo. That's our language. So for you to be privy to these conversations and to feel like you can come in and police how we talk to one another, it kind of gives me colonizer tease. It kind of.
And that's true. It does. It very much does. And I think saying that is jarring to people. Like, how you gonna say I'm a colonizer and this and that? What we're saying, not saying that that's your intent, but when you go out of your way to hear something new from people that you don't understand, and your first thought is to shut it down because it doesn't meet your standards of decency, that's colonizing.
Or
Whether you
it
intend it
just
or
makes
not.
you uncomfortable.
Right. If it offends your sense of comfortability, not even that it wasn't anything rude or vulgar. It just made you uncomfortable. And so now you want to shut it down. Colonizer tease. Tease. Another term that is in our community that you may not understand as I'm using it right now. And I'm not going to define it in this moment because you're listening in on a conversation between Aeon and the Lioness, and we're talking to each other.
And I also kind of feel like we have to get comfortable not explaining everything to everybody, because everything does not need to be explained.
Say that to them.
As long as you and I, as two grown Black trans women, get it, and the people get, because that's wherein lies the problem. And no shade, that's how a lot of times our stuff gets appropriated with
Mm.
just like ballroom culture
Mm-hmm.
and the Nenes and the Tamars. And I've even had experiences where Black cis women that I've come across, I would have used the term on Facebook, and they inbox me, well, what does that mean? And it's like, sis, that wasn't for you to get. I was taught that post was for people that are already in community that get it. It's okay to have some things for ourselves, because trust and believe they have things for themselves and they don't want us a part of it. So it's nothing wrong with us having our own language, cultivating our own language, and if we're the only ones that understand it, that's okay. We don't. It's not a race to see who can be the most palatable and who can be the most accepted. And when we don't value what we do and who we are, that's how we open ourselves to be taken advantage of.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So what do you, like, what is your solution to Black cis women who feel offended that we use the term fish?
Log off, unsubscribe, block, delete. All of those things are options. And I say that because we live in a world where you really can choose your experience. You can choose the apps on your phone. You can choose who you follow on those apps. You can choose to click on the lives for those apps. You can choose to download the whatever. What I'm saying is that all of the ways that we can control our environment now, including all of these features for privacy and protection and blocking, allow you to control your experience. We have to stop living in an era where we want to control everyone's conversation and you're canceled if I don't fucking agree, bitch. If I don't feel it, we're shutting you down. We live in a world today where free speech is threatened by respectability politics. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you came here looking for respectability, you're not going to find it, because ain't shit respectable in y'all eyes about my experience as a Black trans woman. And I want to say that because even the things that you might identify with, I don't experience the world in the same way. And I want to speak from my experience on this show without having to pretend to fit into some narrative. So I want to first put that into the space. Like, I don't want to make it seem like because I am married, my marriage is maybe similar, but it is like a snowflake. It is very unique in the way that it conducts itself. The way I navigate is similar, but it's unique. And I feel like we need to also take up the space to differentiate our perspective. And like you said earlier, not do too much explaining, girl. Like at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, you need to remember that you're in charge of self-care. I cannot define your experience. And the views and opinions of this podcast should not define your life, alter your reality in a way that makes you feel triggered. If you are, that is the strategy I suggest. And education. Go seek deeper meaning on your own. Take the time to advocate for your own educational awareness and go do the research. That's not my ministry. I am not an encyclopedia. We live in a world where that is also an app on your phone in your hand. Figure out for yourself before you judge another community the things that you can figure out so that you come armed with the tools to engage. That's a two-way street. It's not my responsibility to explain everything to you. And like Brianna said earlier, for you to then take it and appropriate it and be the translator for everyone else. You do your research to meet me because we are putting out content to the world. So in the future, I know there will be people that will come onto our podcast and will have very, very egregiously strong, violent reactions to something that one or both of us may have said. I want you to know, one, we mean no offense. We come in love, and the goal is to spread light. But two, we don't care. And because we are aware that our perspective is unique, and unique perspectives ruffle feathers. So yes, respectability politics ain't shit respectable about me, and I don't want to live that way. So I want you to know it's your responsibility to have self-care and to educate yourself.
That's right. So I feel like we've said all we need to say on that topic. What do you think?
I think we did it. I think it was succinct. I think we gave them a teachable, we gave them tools to take with them. We gave them strategies. We even gave them places where they could look for more information. I
Right.
think we did a good job.
There's plenty of video. There's plenty of fab people in community that have done the work, breaking that. Cat Black, Marsha's Plate, so many other
Yeah.
podcasters and YouTube personalities that have, because we're gonna, like somebody said, we're gonna explain a little bit, but we're not gonna explain everything, especially as we, because if we and this is the trap that a lot of cishet folks bait queer folks into. If we
Mm-hmm.
keep on going through the process of explaining the trans 101 conversation over and over and over again, we really don't get to like the depths of conversations that we need to have and we need to bring to the forefront. Like we just don't have the time or the labor to keep educating y'all when people have already done the work
Mm-hmm.
to educate y'all. And this is not going to be a surface podcast. We're going to have some deep, honest, gut wrenching, in the soul conversations, and that it kind of requires an elevation that if you're not ready to go on this ride with us, you're not going to get the most of these conversations. So I implore
Exactly.
you to do your work. Do for the new listeners that we might attract that are not in community, do the work to prep yourself so that when you listen to us, you're really able to receive the different perspectives and the nuances of the conversations that we're going, because we're going to have some conversations.
Yeah.
So I think we can in this episode here. Anything you
I
want to
think we
leave
would.
the
I was gonna say I do want to leave them with this, and I want to
right,
first, before I leave them with anything, I want to give a shout out really fast. Thank you
right.
so much to Diamond.
Thank you, Diamond.
You gave us some good advice there in a pinch, and I do consider you in this world a bit of a mentor. And so thank you, mentor, for taking the opportunity to take on these new mentees, and we look forward to being upholding your expectation. Actually, you spoke very beautiful things over us the other day, and we look forward to meeting your expectation of sisterhood in this and cohabitating this ecosystem of podcasts. Like, we're the new girls in town, and shout out to you, Diamond, for being there for us. And then for my final word, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for bringing your open minds to the table, your open hearts to the table. Thank you for making us a priority in your future. We hope that you like. We hope that you subscribe. We hope that you share. We hope that you post. We are put here to spread a light. And we know that light attracts other light. And as light bringers, we should come together in this time to drive away darkness. And one way of doing that is operating in love, but also using our voices to educate, to enlighten, and to put good news, goodness, good seeds in the ground out in this world. So thank you, one and all. And we look forward to planting more seeds with you.
And also continue to wash your hands and isolate, so we can prevent the spread of coronavirus because it's getting real.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're gonna end it here. We will see y'all next week. Until then, continue to strive for excellence.
Love y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
for
listening
listening
to
to
Box
Box
Number
Number
512.
512.
And
And
don't
don't
forget
forget
to
to
subscribe
subscribe and like all of our pages on social media
so you can see what will stock on the shelf next week. Bye.